This is Battle of the Baitcasters, Part 1, Daiwa Lexa. Today, we have a few variations of the Daiwa Lexa. What's the difference between this and something like this? Because the Lexa Win, it looks so confusing. There's another model that has the blue knob, and that's a previous model. But we were always curious, why am I choosing this model between this model and all the new TW coastal models? So we're here to explain all of that. So what we have here is all 7.1 gear ratios, except for the 300. This is just an example. This is a 7.4, and I only have it in here for size reference between this and the coastal, which looks almost identical. So all of these are 7 high-speed gears. 400, 400, 400, and 400. Everything else spec-wise is very identical on between these two and according to these two. So one thing I note between them is these models, the Coastal and the HD, they're targeted towards salt water, while the Win and this Pro Rex here, which is the same counterpart as the TW Coastal, are for freshwater guys. Their target is musky fishing. And how do we know that's the case, saying that it's more catered towards freshwater versus saltwater? It all lies in how Daiwa marketed it with corrosion resistant bearings on these models here. On the HD, you're going to find 6 corrosion resistant bearings. On the TW Coastal, you're going to find 8 corrosion resistant bearings. While these here, there's only 2 corrosion resistant bearings between these two. There's ball bearings and there's 5 ball bearings. In place of the corrosion resistant bearings that are on these, they took them and just put regular ball bearings. Now for me, I always thought that ball bearings were even in all offshore conventional reels. What you're going to find weight-wise between this is at 17.1 ounces and 16.9 ounces. So still lightweight considering that you have a baitcaster. But notice, if you're into this category already, 12.2 ounces on these. Really lightweight. And considering that, this one, the 300 size, is 12.3 ounces. And what we're here to find out, what did they do all the differences to make this reduced weight? So let's start off looking at the 400 size and comparing it to this 300. These are the most popular ones that you're going to see here. And I think everybody always naturally goes for the 400. If I'm trying to give you an idea of how it looks like on my palm. They're both at the same height level. It's a lot more smaller on the 300 palmable, and at 400, it's still very easy to cast with this. Very easy to use, just a little bit more bulkier. And why did this frame size have such a long extended design? For the design of this, there is a larger frame. It has a lot more distance between the spool and the level wind, and that's in consideration for line angle when it's peeling out away from the spool itself to reduce stress on the level wind itself. Now looking at the TW, why do we see a difference in this update? It's with the level wind itself. They call it the T-wing. And if you're looking at that, you're going to see the same slot right here that's familiar on the lexa-hd. Now notice, as soon as I release it, it opens it up and it gives a bigger T-wing expansion. So now it gives a lot more alleviation for the line spool. So if you look, your line spool now can be decreased on how it comes off from the spool. A lot less tension, and that's called the T-wing system, TWS. Now comparing the lexa-tw, this 400 size and the 300, I'm going to be honest, it's almost the same size in the palm of my hands. The difference that you get is a lot more capacity on this one. You're also getting higher drag numbers. And lastly, what you get is the T-wing system. So these two are identical reels, just marketed for different demographics. Saltwater, freshwater, and they call this one the Pro Rex. Has pretty cool accents with purple hues. The spool is purple anodized along with the tensioner and this plate here and the actual plate cover for the EVA foam knob. So just a little bit of cool designs, but everything else is near identical. What I thought immediately when I saw this, I was trying to look for any other differences physically, and it was the first time when I saw this because this is not painted or anodized or anything like that. And when I looked at it, this is made out of plastic here. So it got me curious when I looked at the TW, the coastal one, this is plastic as well. On the HD model, you're going to find aluminum on the star itself. Now that we know the size difference between them and the 300, I'm getting the 300 away, and all we're focusing on is only the 400 sizes. Now, if you look at these, as we mentioned, the ones on the right side catered towards freshwater, the ones on the left side catered towards offshore salt anglers. The next thing we want to do is see the components of how they're made internally. Let's do that. Now, this is the TW Coastal, and This is the ProRex, and I'm going to give you my visual comparison right now. Pinion gear appears to be stainless steel, and that's these right here. It's equal on both. The main gear appears to be brass, but it's the same brass gear that you'll find on the Win. And then just a note is the level wind is plastic. You see it on both of them. And look at the level wind on the bottom. This is a side profile that's also plastic in there as well. Other than that, majority of the parts looks identical. All right, that's these two on the TW. Now, the HD and the Win. Can you see a big difference already? The two main gears. Brass completely on this side, main and pinion. You can see that it's brass on the top side of it, which is nice. And I do feel weight just holding these two already comparing to the TW. There's a lot of weight here. And that could be that because this one has line and spool obviously, and the side plate. Same, this one just has a spool and the side plate, but the gears actually appear bigger as well. Single dog, stainless, a little bit bigger, but let's take a look at that a little closer. So up close on the HD model, you're gonna see that brass gear for the level wind and then plastic right here. Pinion gear stainless steel, and looking at all the components, a single dog paw, and that applies to every single one of them. Other components here are steel on this, and when you're looking between these two, this is the HD. Your only difference you're going to see visually is that the pinion gear is brass on this side, and everything else is identical between the two. And we do know that it has less corrosion resistant bearings, 6 here and then 2 right here. Here's a TW. And notice how that plastic looks like. I'm going to move this dog over. Plastic on both of them. So one key note, let's take a look at it, because this is the Win, and that's the TW. If you can see that, 53.3, 44.8. Now check this out. Let's take a look at the width. 6 millimeter. 4.5 almost, 4.6. That's the difference right here. They're both helical cuts, but this thing is just a big, huge gear. And how do you get that much drag still when the diameter of these drags are smaller? And look at the drags on these. Even if how many stacks you have, let's take a look here. It's 1. That's 3 on this one. So this is the third. Has a nice grease on it. Same, it has 3. It has 3 on these. I don't know. 'Cause this bottom one, I mean, it's not much bigger than this size versus this size. I mean, the HD and the Win is so much more bigger. I feel like I'm getting duped on their drag specs unless it's a different material that they're using altogether. This is the HD 400 and this is the Win. This is the main gear between the two. And what I'm noticing, besides the stainless steel, when you look at these two, their drags, they're all dry. While the TW models, they've greased them. So they're using some type of drag grease, there's a couple of options. You have something like this, cow's grease. It's kind of peculiar because you're looking at all this and you have a really great option of better materials on the Win and the HD. Really good internal components. On the TW, you do have a T-wing system. You have everything a lighter profile. The level wind, I guess because there's not a lot of strain because of the T-wing, you're not worried about it because there's no more stress on it. That being plastic is okay. But here's between the two. Hard to see, but let's take a look here and I'll show you the diameter of these two. So 7.5 and 8.6 on the older model. Stainless steel on these two and only brass on the Win. The ProRex itself is stainless steel as well. So we do get roller bearings on these, on all of them. What that does is the roller bearings only spins one direction, doesn't spin backwards. What do you think about this on the purple? And even with these, without the counterbalance, wouldn't you want one of these on your HD or the Win model if it reduces the weight? The counterbalanced handle from the HD and the Win, which is 2.8 ounces versus 1.65 ounces on the TW Coastal one. So we finished it off. Lexa HD, Lexa Win, Lexa TW, and the Pro Rex. These are all in the 400 series, 7.1 gears for all of them. What did we talk about when we were looking at this? We were talking about the bearings between them. CRBB, corrosion resistant bearings, and that's primarily targeted towards salted anglers, while these still have the same amount of bearings, but they only have 2 CRBBs for them, so it's catered towards freshwater. The remaining bearings are just what they call BBs, which is just ball bearings. The new models and the old models, these Win or the Lexa HD, 25 pounds of drag on these two, 28.7 pounds of drag on the newer models. Even with 25 pounds of drag, you wouldn't be applying half of it when you're actually fishing. The main gears on both of them, we did take a look at it. We noticed that they were much more larger on the older models, which was 53.2 diameter, and they were 6mm width on the gears. Meanwhile, they did get smaller, which brings down the weight on these. It was at 44.8 and 4.7 width. With the main gear, you notice that you had stainless steel on the HD, you had brass on the newer models, and also brass on the Win. For the pinion gear, we had stainless steel on the HD and stainless steel on the TW and the Pro Rex. However, only the Win had brass. Weight-wise, you're going to have a little bit more weight on these older ones. There's a lot more components in it, even with the counterbalance on the handle. There's also the stainless steel gears inside, the bigger sizes of the gears, the width of it, all that weight, including the overall frame size, accounts for the weight. We do reduce a lot of weight here on the newer models, 12.2 ounces. That is amazing. And if you're comparing it to the old one, this Lexa HD 300 size is 12.3 ounces. So they really brought down the weight on these newer models. We now see the delete of the counterbalance. We see a little bit more lighter components like the plastic on the Star. We saw that the main gear got a lot smaller even in diameter. However, everything's packaged nice and neatly and comfortable and a luxury to be able to fish at 12.2 ounces. With that in mind, line capacity. We get 300 yards of 40-pound braid on these two, and then we only get 260 yards on the newer one. The loss of 40 yards, it sounds like it's a big deal. Just a note, the Daiwa Saltiga 15H, this one has a max capacity of 260 yards of 40-pound braid as well. Two guys on our last trip caught bluefin tuna on this. They were around the 40-50 pound range. Didn't have a problem with line capacity. With the loss of line, we're curious what happened here. What we noticed and what I counted was the spool width. You get 32mm width on these, that's just a little bit more, and you're getting 29.2. So you're almost losing 3mm of spool width on the newer models. Hope that helps out, guys. I gave you guys a lot of detail about the reels itself. Really nice reels overall. Choose the one that fits you and your price range best. All of them are great reels, lots of drag capacity. Even at the weights of these, this is like what your standard reel would weigh like. This is actually what for me was the luxury of fishing because it's still lighter than most of them. But having this is kind of like going into a whole new realm of lightweight. Stay tuned for part 2.